quiet darkness. Some stories do not begin with violence. They begin with silence. The kind of silence that creeps back into a house long after the lights have gone out. The kind that settles into corners, waiting for someone to notice what's missing. In Modesto, California, the winter of 2002 carried that kind of quiet, a stillness that didn't belong. Neighbors felt it, friends felt it, and in a small home on Covina Avenue, a darkness was preparing to swallow a life that had once been full of warmth. Before the world knew her name, before headlines, courtrooms, and national outrage, there was simply Laci Peterson, a 27-year-old woman who laughed easily, loved deeply, and carried a child she eagerly waited to meet. To the outside world, nothing looked unusual. A peaceful suburban street, a young married couple, a baby on the way, a home decorated for Christmas. But sometimes, darkness hides where no one thinks to look. You're watching Cold Case Secrets, where the truth never stays buried. Before we open the case file, drop your location. Let's see who's in the room. On the night before Christmas Eve, as Modesto slept under a pale winter sky, Laci folded laundry, wrapped gifts, and prepared for the holiday morning she believed she would share with her family. She didn't know these small, ordinary moments would be the final threads of her life. She went to bed beside her husband, unaware that her home, the place she trusted, was no longer safe. And by sunrise, the silence had already begun. A morning that never came. December 24th, 2002. The morning was gentle, cool, and unremarkable. The kind of morning during which nothing tragic is supposed to happen. Somewhere inside that house, a clock ticked toward the moment everything would break. Laci was 8 months pregnant, glowing, hopeful, excited. She had plans that day. She was supposed to go to the grocery store. She was supposed to make a lemon meringue pie for her family dinner. She was supposed to spend Christmas wrapped in love. Instead, her family would spend it wrapped in fear. At 10:18 a.m., a neighbor found Laci's dog wandering outside with its leash still attached. A detail so small it might have been ignored. Yet it was the first crack in a story that would later shatter the nation. Laci was gone. Her phone wasn't answering. Her car was still in the driveway. Her purse, keys, and belongings were inside. No signs of a struggle. No forced entry. Just absence and that terrible, creeping silence. By evening, the news spread through Modesto like a cold wind. A pregnant woman missing. Hours passed with no explanation. And somewhere, intentionally or not, someone knew the truth. The world begins to watch. It didn't take long before the story escaped the boundaries of a local disappearance. Pregnant, beautiful, full of life, and stolen without warning. The case drew immediate attention. Volunteers gathered, flyers printed, search teams organized, helicopters launched. The Peterson home became a command center, a place of questions, tears, and tightly held hope. But even in those early hours, detectives noticed something strange. The husband, Scott Peterson, didn't seem afraid. He didn't beg. He didn't panic. He didn't look like a man whose wife and unborn son had vanished without explanation. Instead, he looked calm, detached, controlled. Detectives wrote it down, not yet knowing just how deep that observation would cut. As the sun set on Christmas Eve, Modesto glowed with holiday lights, but Covina Avenue stood in shadow. There was no comfort inside the Peterson home, no celebration, no warmth. Only questions, and one chilling truth whispered through the neighborhood. If Laci wasn't found tonight, she might never come home. The days that followed. Christmas morning arrived with an ache no gift could soften. Families across Modesto opened presents, shared meals, and held each other close. But the Peterson family woke to fear. Every hour felt longer than the last. Every unanswered phone call felt heavier. Every lead turned into nothing. Detectives retraced Laci's steps, dissecting every detail, every possible route, every moment she could have gone missing. But the evidence was thin, almost too thin, as though someone had carefully planned how to erase her. Scott Peterson told police he was fishing that morning. A small detail. Simple. Believable. Except for one thing. The location, the timing, and the circumstances did not fit the behavior of a man preparing to celebrate Christmas with his pregnant wife. Still, investigators held their suspicions quietly, at least for now, because on the surface, the story of a missing mother was still unfolding. The cameras were watching, the country was listening, and the image of a grieving husband played across every news screen, until a single phone call shattered that illusion. A secret life emerges. While volunteers searched lakes, fields, and wooded areas, a woman from Fresno stepped forward with a confession that electrified the investigation. Her name was Amber Fry. She wasn't a witness. She wasn't a neighbor. She wasn't part of the search teams. She was Scott Peterson's secret girlfriend, and he had told her, before Laci disappeared, that he was a widower, that his wife was gone, that he would be spending the holidays alone. He said these words weeks before Laci vanished. Detectives listened. Their hearts sank, and the case turned from a search for a missing pregnant woman into a hunt for the truth. Because lies that confident do not appear by accident. The darkness deepens. The public didn't know it yet, but the case had already changed shape. The warmth in Scott's smile appeared different now. His calmness no longer looked like composure, but calculation. Still, without a body, without a crime scene, and without proof of violence, investigators needed time. A terrible, suffocating time. Searchers continued to walk miles of shoreline. Boats scanned dark waters. Officers sifted through fields and marshes. But Laci remained missing. Her baby remained missing. And Scott Peterson, the man at the center of it all, continued to play two roles: the grieving husband and the man lying to his mistress. It was a dual life held together by silence. But silence, no matter how heavy, eventually breaks. The weight of a lie. In the days after Christmas, Modesto transformed into a town of search grids and whispered fears. Volunteers paced dirt roads and riverbanks, scanning the ground for any sign of Laci. They carried flashlights, water bottles, and heartbreaking hope. But hope grows heavier with time. Every day without answers felt like a day stolen from her child, the little boy she intended to name Connor. A baby shower invitation still lay on the kitchen counter. Nursery decorations were still waiting to be hung. And inside a home that once held warmth, a crib stood untouched, surrounded by a silence that tightened with every passing hour. The public wanted answers. Detectives needed truth. But Scott Peterson gave neither. He repeated the same phrases, the same routine, the same emotionless calm. His voice never cracked. His hands never trembled. The press saw him as distant. Investigators saw him as dangerous. But Amber Fry, she saw him clearly. The image she carried was not of a grieving husband, but of a man who crafted stories like traps, weaving fiction and charm into a net of deceit. And now that net was unraveling. Because the moment Amber revealed her secret, the moment she told police about Scott's lies, the investigation ignited with a fire that could no longer be contained. Before we uncover what happened next, take a moment to subscribe. More untold cases, more chilling truths. Right here on Cold Case Secrets. The shattering of an illusion. Amber agreed to cooperate fully. She wore a recorder. She documented calls. She let detectives listen as Scott spun more lies. Even while Laci's disappearance dominated every news broadcast in America. While standing in front of cameras, he pleaded for help. While speaking to Amber in private, he whispered romantic promises. The contrast was chilling, and the public began to see it too. Reporters questioned his behavior. Viewers questioned his sincerity. Even strangers noticed the absence of grief in his eyes. And yet, without Laci's body, the case was suspended in limbo, a terrible waiting game between truth and proof. As days turned into weeks, fear gave way to a darker suspicion. Laci wasn't lost. Laci wasn't missing. Laci had been silenced. The search expands. Detectives widen their search radius, focusing intensely on the San Francisco Bay, where Scott claimed he had gone fishing the morning Laci vanished. The timing, the location, the strange specificity of the trip, none of it made sense. The bay waters were unforgiving, deep, cold, and murky, a place where things could disappear forever. a place where voices couldn't reach the surface. Boats swept through waves like ghostly shadows, dragging equipment across the bottom. Sonar scans hummed through the water. The wind carried the smell of salt and tension. But the bay kept its secrets, and Scott kept his lie. A country divided. By January, the Peterson case was everywhere. News broadcasts, newspapers, radios, talk shows. The nation had taken sides, each person clinging to their own theory of guilt or innocence. But inside investigation rooms, away from public noise, detectives focused on fact over opinion. Scott's story didn't change, but the evidence did. He bought a boat weeks before Laci disappeared, secretly. He made multiple unexplained trips to the bay. He avoided the media unless absolutely necessary. He didn't attend search events. He traded Laci's truck. He inquired about selling their house. He added premium cable channels the day after her disappearance. These weren't the actions of a man paralyzed by grief. These were the footprints of someone moving on, someone preparing for a life without the wife he claimed to love. The calls that changed everything. The recorded phone calls between Scott and Amber painted a chilling portrait. A man who performed empathy rather than felt it. Detectives listened as he lied effortlessly. "I'm in Paris right now. I'm at a New Year's Eve celebration. I wish you were here." In reality, he was at a vigil for the wife he insisted he hadn't harmed. And while candles flickered for Laci's safe return, Scott whispered to another woman about a future without her. The duality was haunting. The manipulation was calculated. And investigators knew, if a heart can lie so naturally, it can hide darker truths just as easily. The public turns. By February, public sympathy shifted sharply. What once seemed like a tragedy now looked like a betrayal. The search for Laci continued, but whispers of suspicion had become a storm. Neighbors began questioning their early impressions of Scott. Reporters dissected his behavior. The nation watched him with wary eyes. Still, detectives remained patient, because the truth they needed, the truth that could break a case wide open, was still beneath the surface. Hidden, waiting, just like Laci. Spring arrives, and so does the truth. April 2003. The bay had grown colder, the water darker, the search quieter. Then, on a seemingly ordinary morning, the tide shifted, bringing with it a discovery that would change everything. A tiny body, a baby boy, washed ashore near the Berkeley Marina. His umbilical cord torn, his form fragile, his life stolen before birth. And the next day, a second body, a woman, unrecognizable, ravaged by the water, but clothing remnants matched Laci's description. Her torso was found, limbs missing, head missing. Nature had done its damage, but the truth was unmistakable. The bay had given back what someone tried to hide, and with it, the silence that had kept this story hostage finally broke. The air grows heavy. News spread like wildfire. The remains of a mother and her unborn child, found in the same water Scott claimed he visited on the morning she vanished. Detectives moved swiftly. No hesitation, no doubt. Scott Peterson was now a hunted man. But when they finally located him, he wasn't going home. He wasn't preparing for a trial. He was found with his brother's ID, $15,000 cash, camping supplies, a gun, and his car packed as if preparing to disappear. He claimed he was going golfing, but investigators knew better, because guilty men do not run from justice unless they fear it is coming, and justice was closer than ever. The trial of a lifetime. When Scott Peterson was taken into custody, a strange stillness swept across Modesto, a silence heavy enough to feel. Neighbors closed their blinds. Reporters gathered in waves. And somewhere inside a modest home glowing with soft yellow light, Laci's family exhaled for the first time in months. Not because the pain had eased, not because answers had arrived, but because the man they feared had finally been unmasked. The trial that followed would be one of the most watched in American history. A courtroom steeped in tension, sorrow, and a darkness that clung to every testimony. The story of Laci Peterson had shifted from tragedy to betrayal to reckoning. As the days passed, the hope of finding Laci alive began to fade. Candlelight vigils filled the streets of Modesto. Strangers held hands. Prayers were whispered into the cold December air. And all the while, one man stood at the center of it all, calm, composed, unmoved. Scott Peterson spoke to the media. He joined the search. He said all the right words. But behind closed doors, something didn't add up. Investigators would soon uncover secret phone calls, a double life, and a truth so devastating it would shatter a family and divide a nation. Because while the world searched for Laci Peterson, her husband was already planning a future without her. And just when hope seemed completely lost, the water gave up its secret. What was found would turn a missing persons case into a murder investigation and expose a betrayal so cold it would haunt America for decades. In part 2, the lies unravel, the evidence surfaces, and the question becomes impossible to escape. Did Scott Peterson kill his pregnant wife, or was someone else hiding in the shadows? The truth waits in part 2.
Don't let the trail go cold. Subscribe to Cold Case Secrets.